Hello there, welcome to ITV News Meridian.
Tonight's headlines this Monday evening. Thousands of homes left without water in Kent and Sussex. Schools and companies are forced to close. Locals rely on bottled water.
Well, it's not very good. We're in a close of 9 houses in Hawkhurst, and they've told us we've got to come up and pick to load up for all the elderly neighbours. Some of them are, not very well.
As Rishi Sunak joins the climate change conference in Egypt, we look at the science and the figures behind the floods and the flames and see what it means for the southeast.
Also this Monday evening, bring your dog to work. Why more companies are happy to see our four-legged friends in the workplace.
And what lies beneath, going underground for the hidden history of the southeast. Good evening. Thousands of homes and businesses in rural Kent and East Sussex have been without water since early yesterday morning. Supply problems started at the weekend, affecting towns and villages in the Weald, forcing a number of schools to shut.
South East Water has apologised and blamed the problem on a power failure at one of its treatment works. With more, here's Kit Bradshaw.
For home workers like Callum Eade, having no running water quickly becomes a round-the-clock problem. His property in Hawkhurst, one of thousands cut off since Sunday morning.
Our heating system runs off hot water, so at the moment we've got no heat in, so it's relatively cold. Like last night was a cold night. We had to go down to my nan's for a shower. I know there's businesses within the area, pubs, that have had to close their kitchens because they've got no water. Also with toilets, we've got no toilets. We can use the toilet, but we can't flush it.
This village primary school decided to remain closed today because of the supply issues, while the Hawkhurst Community Hospital had to get water delivered in tanks, with vulnerable households also prioritised for bottle deliveries.
Our main treatment works at Buell Water. That is the site that actually feeds the 2 large reservoirs in the local areas. So what we experienced on early part of the weekend was there was a major power outage which affected all of our processes on our site. The water that we did have stored in our reservoirs has actually now drained right down into supply, which has made us not being able to provide water to our customers how we would normally do through their taps.
Would you like to apologise to the customers who've been affected?
Oh, of course, wholeheartedly. On behalf of South East Water, we do apologise for the inconvenience caused.
2 emergency bottled water stations in Hawkhurst and Northiam have been open throughout the day for those able to collect in their cars or on foot.
Pick to load up for all the elderly neighbours. Some of them are, not very well and infirm, and they can't just get down to the shops or drive so easy.
There's a little bit in the tank that we have there, so we're kind of rationing everything.
South East Water technicians are working to get the affected treatment works back up and running as soon as possible.
Well, Kit's in Hawkhurst with the latest for us. Kit.
Matt, some 8,000 South East Water customers in this part of Kent and across into East Sussex have had no water or low water pressure for around 30 hours now. And it's not just this village, the nearby communities of Goudhurst, Matfield, Kilndown, Wadhurst, Sandhurst and Northiam all affected. But Nick Bell, the incident manager who you saw in my report, tells me that they hope that all those affected homes and businesses will have their supplies restored by the early hours of tomorrow morning. But until that time, we've seen a steady stream of people coming to get the free bottled water from stations like this evening.
OK, Kit, for now, thank you.
In other news tonight, a couple from Eastbourne who ill-treated 7 children have been jailed. Gemma Brogan and Christopher Bennett were sentenced after pleading guilty to 7 counts of child neglect. Officers said it was impossible to paint an accurate picture of the horrific conditions the children were living in, the worst they'd ever seen. The children have been taken into care.
2 men have been arrested on suspicion of murder after a man was found dead outside a village pub in Mepham. Officers were called to the Cricketers Inn on Saturday night and found 2 men with stab wounds. One in his 30s was pronounced dead at the scene. The other remains in hospital.
Concern is growing following the disappearance of a Worthing Raiders rugby player, Levi Davis. He's been missing for more than a week. The winger was last seen at a pub in Spain on the 29th of October. The 24-year-old is also known for featuring on ITV's Celebrity X Factor back in 2019.
When I couldn't get hold of him on his phone, it was just ringing out and went, dead. still is. And of course, a couple of his friends also got in touch because they were concerned. And then, yeah, pretty much since then we've been, searching for Levi.
Several vehicles have been damaged over the weekend in a suspected arson attack in Woodensborough. Thousands of pounds worth of damage was caused to 3 vehicles at Kiln Lane. Police are appealing for witnesses.
Border Force staff working at Manston Migrant Processing Centre in Kent say they will take legal action against the government over the conditions they've had to work in.
Well, meanwhile, at the environmental conference COP27 in Egypt today, the Prime Minister called on his French counterpart to do more to help curb channel crossings.
Well, Sarah Saunders is at the centre for us tonight. Sarah, do you think the French will actually step in to help now?
Well, we are hearing some quite positive noises about a possible deal between the UK and the French. What Rishi Sunak is looking for is the French to help reduce migrant crossings by making a commitment to a minimum number of French officers on French beaches. Now, he's also understood to be possibly suggesting that there should be British Border Force boots on French soil in order to support them. I should say that idea has been mentioned before and was very, very quickly rejected. Well, back home today in Parliament, Roger Gale raised an urgent question and learnt that Manston, here behind me, is now once again legally compliant.
Can he confirm that additional accommodation will be provided so that the spike in November, which is anticipated and which will happen, as it happened last year, will be catered for so that we won't have a repetition of the clogging up of the facilities at Manston?
The population is now back at an acceptable level, and that is a considerable achievement. It's essential that it remains so, and he's right to say that the challenge is far from over.
Well, also speaking in Parliament, MP Craig McKinley says he understands that 86 rooms have been taken from Christchurch University in order to house asylum seekers, and this is still a system under massive pressure. Today we understand that a union representing Border Force staff that work here have said they will take legal action against the government for effectively allowing this centre to operate as an unofficial and illegal detention centre. They're concerned about the migrants inside, and they're concerned that their members have been required to effectively break the law to keep people here.
We think the conditions at Manston breach Articles 3, 5 and 8 of the European Convention on Human Rights, as well as a whole raft of domestic legislation, policy and procedure governing detainees. We believe that the Home Secretary is in breach of her own law, and she needs to address that situation very, very quickly.
Well, there will be still more scrutiny here at Manston. The Home Affairs Committee is due to visit here before. They've been very critical of the government in the past.
Sarah Saunders, thank you very much for that.
Just Stop Oil protesters caused serious delays on the M25 in Essex in Kent today. They climbed gantries over the motorway this morning, blocking traffic in both directions. Officers were called to junction 30 at Thurrock, while the motorway was also closed between junctions 6 and 7. Specially trained officers managed to remove the campaigners and made a number of arrests.
A flood warning is in place in Alfriston in East Sussex. River levels on the Cuckmere are higher than normal due to the recent wet weather and are likely to remain so until midweek.
The Kent Police and Crime Commissioner says he's been assured improvements are being made after the force was criticised last year. There were several areas of concern, including the way they investigate crime.
We cannot hide from the poor gradings that Kent Police got, requiring improvement in those really basic areas, the areas in which the public expect the police to perform for them. That's not to say they weren't outstanding and good in other areas, because they were, but there were some really serious flaws that they identified. I know how hard people have been working, and I have been assured that there is good progress. Victim satisfaction for domestic abuse victims has increased.
Now you're watching ITV News Meridian. Coming up on the programme.
The hidden history of underground Kent. We find out what lies beneath our green and pleasant land.
More on our stories, of course, today on our website. itv.com/Meridian is the address. You can call us. There's the phone number. And don't forget to follow us on social media.
Now, as COP27 gets underway in Egypt today, there's a warning from scientists that Europe's average temperature is warming at twice the global average.
Well, leaders from across the globe are gathering to discuss measures to slow the onset of climate change. Many of their decisions will be based on data and research collated by world-class scientists right here in the UK. Our weather forecaster, Philippa Drew, has been finding out who they are and how they predict what our planet might look like in the future.
The evidence is mounting that climate change is no longer some far-off apocalyptic scenario. We are already seeing the impact of more extreme weather in our region and across the nation.
Climate change is no longer something we can ignore locally as we see the impact seeping into our everyday lives. This summer alone, we had record-breaking heat in the southeast, the likes of which would have been unimaginable not so long ago. Add to that, our seasons are shifting and merging, and extremes such as droughts and floods will become the norm.
The Hadley Centre at the Met Office is a world leader in climate research, with detailed weather records stretching back to the mid-17th century. It's the job of climatologists here to use that data, alongside cutting-edge modern technology, to observe how long-term trends are changing and the influence humans have on our climate.
Heat waves are becoming more intense, more severe, more frequent. We looked at the chances of 40 degrees in the UK, and we found that without human influence on the climate, these kind of temperatures would have been almost impossible. Now they are possible, and we did record temperatures above 40 degrees only a few months ago. And going forward, the likelihood is dramatically increasing. The change is happening at a very fast pace.
A major concern from those researching climate change is that if average global temperatures continue to rise, it can cause events which will supercharge the process, pushing us past a point of no return.
If we warm the world to a certain point, it could trigger something else. So, for example, there's a lot of methane which is stored in these almost like icy deposits. And if it warms to a certain point, they'll become unstable and they'll melt and all that methane will come out. And it's called a tipping point because you can't just shove it back in again. You can't be like, I'm so sorry, we changed our mind. But what we do know about tipping points is that the risk of hitting them increases the more we increase our emissions.
The research and observations made here are used to develop best and worst case predictions on what could happen in the future, depending on the actions we take.
What happens with our future climate very much depends on what we choose to do in the next decade or so. If we reduce the amount of greenhouse gases that we put into the atmosphere, we'll have a very different future to one where we continue to emit greenhouse gases. We project that the future UK summer temperature will be 5 degrees warmer than it currently is on average, in a future where we have a larger amount of greenhouse gases emitted. If we reduce our greenhouse gas emissions into the future, that summer temperature is maybe only 1.5 degrees warmer.
The climatologists can only offer warnings. The power to enact change rests in the hands of our leaders, who now shoulder the responsibility of making decisions which can ultimately shape the very future of our planet.
Well, Philippa will be back with the forecast a little bit later on in the programme. Well, the UK, of course, hosted COP26 in Glasgow last year, but a lot's happened since then with the war in Ukraine and the cost of living crisis. So what can we expect from COP27?
Well, I'm joined now by Heather Plumpton from the Green Alliance. Heather, there was so much hope after COP26, but do you think the UK has made enough progress since then?
Yes, I mean, the government has got these ambitious targets. They've got good climate targets. We've got net zero by 2050, and we've got our target for 2030, which is to reduce emissions by 68%. But the problem is that the government's not on track to meet those targets. We're going too slowly, so we do need to accelerate action to get ourselves back on track, and that means accelerating things like renewables. The government could unblock onshore wind, for example, which is almost impossible to build in the UK at the moment, and that would really help lower people's energy bills as well as tackle climate change.
The problem is the global situation has changed so significantly since then with the war in Ukraine. Do you think those targets are still achievable?
I think we've got to be realistic. We've got to also be optimistic. I think the crisis in Ukraine, the war in Ukraine, has really shown us the problem with our dependence on gas. It's our dependence on this fossil fuel, gas, that is causing people to struggle to pay their energy bills. The price of gas has gone up. We need to move away from our dependence on gas onto things like renewables, and that will protect and shield consumers from seeing those fluctuations in prices. So it's about renewables and also, crucially, about insulating people's homes. People need support in order to insulate their homes so that they need less energy, so that they'll have permanently lower bills no matter what the fuel is.
So what would you like to see come out of COP27?
I think we need to see two major things, for sure. Firstly, money. I think money is going to need to be delivered to countries that are already seeing the worst impacts of climate change. And these are the countries that have contributed the least to climate change. And they're already seeing things like flooding from sea level rise and more frequent and extreme storms, for example. So the money needs to be there to support them to adapt to climate change. But we also need to see countries commit to moving away from fossil fuels, moving away from a fossil fuel-based system and moving to renewables. So that means wind, that means solar, and it means insulating people's homes. So that's really what we'd like to see.
Very briefly, are you confident that we can turn this situation around?
Yes, I think we can. I think you've got to bring people together. That's what COP's about. It's about bringing all the international leaders from across the world together to discuss this. We've got to have these conversations. This is how we get international agreement on what is fundamentally an international issue. The UK can show its leadership, its progress, what we've done that's worked, and I think that will spur on others.
Let's hope so. Heather Plumpton, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Well, more on that, of course, and the rest of the day's news on the ITV national and international news, which follows us at 6:30. With the details, here's Mary Nightingale.
Coming up in the programme, the COP Climate Summit kicks off with a warning: we are on the road to climate hell. The stakes are high as world leaders gather in Egypt. So what can be done to make up for what's being called a wasted year of inaction? Also tonight, the pre-Christmas lockdown for turkeys. Bird flu forces all of England's poultry indoors. And the series only started last night, but already one campmate is getting out of I'm a Celebrity. We explain why, and we have all of the action from Australia. Well, do join me for those stories and more at 6:30.
Thanks, Mary. Now, we are a nation of animal lovers, and one company in Brighton is showing us how they use dogs to reduce stress in the office.
In this Stress Awareness Week, staff are all encouraged to bring their dogs into work, making for a calmer environment all round. With more, here's Abigail Bracken.
Another regular day in the office for Callie, Bear, Shaska, and not forgetting Dolly, the toy poodle, who are welcomed into this tech company in Brighton to boost morale as well as reduce stress levels.
I think it's really important that dogs are welcome everywhere that we go. They're quite calm, and it's really nice for not just the employees who own the dogs, but also for others as well, because they find themselves sort of wandering around, and it's quite calming.
The dogs started coming in during this summer's heat waves, these fluffy Samoyeds, loving the air conditioning. But managers notice improvements both in productivity and stress levels, so they've stayed.
So if anyone here is having a really stressful day at work, all they have to do is go for a lovely, calming dog walk. Shaska, Bear, walkies! Good girl. Woo!
And it means lockdown dogs like Dolly can stay with the owners they'd grown used to working from home.
She can be quite nervous when left by herself, so this really helps personally. But she's just very friendly. She likes to fall asleep like a baby, as you can see. And she's sort of our furry daughter, I think it's fair to say.
They're so funny and interactive, and it's great just seeing them running around. And it's not often we have many in at the one time, but when we do, it's hysterical to see them all running around. So it definitely uplifts everyone in the office, and it's nice to be able to get out and take her for a walk.
And now staff here hope more workplaces will allow in our fluffy companions, helping us all de-stress. Abigail Bracken, ITV News, Brighton.
We've had a few dogs in here, but normally it's been too stressful because they don't want to stay in the studio.
Yeah, it doesn't exactly calm you down.
No, it doesn't.
Let's see if there's anything stressful about the sport this evening. Andrew joins us in the studio. And Andrew, the magic of the FA Cup continues not too stressfully for two of our sides.
Absolutely, and the draw for the second round is at 7 o'clock. Should be fun. Now, in the hat are Gillingham and Ebbsfleet United. The Gills still need to win a replay to make it through, but Ebbsfleet are absolutely flying.
Zero Accounting Software sponsors ITV Regional Sports Report.
Ebbsfleet are in the second round of the FA Cup for the first time in 10 years. Toby Edster setting them on their way. Halifax Town play in the National League, the division above Ebbsfleet, and level thanks to Jamie Cook's powerhouse. But the Fleet weren't to be denied. Rakish Bingham with the winner, as the fans now prepare for round 2 in 3 weeks' time. Gillingham will host non-league AFC Fylde on Tuesday next week, despite taking the lead here thanks to Michael Mandron. The Gills may be 2 divisions above National League North side Fylde, but no, the replay won't be easy after this late equaliser from Tom Walker. But it's all over for Crawley, who suffered their first defeat under interim boss Lewis Young, going behind after just 45 seconds. The Sussex side did equalise thanks to Jake Hesenthaler's first goal of the season, but Accrington Stanley, who are the division above Crawley, proved too strong, leaving Lewis Young and his side to concentrate on the league. So the draw is coming up just after 7 o'clock, and these are the numbers to look out for. Gillingham or AFC Fylde are ball number 9, while Ebbsfleet United are, lucky for them, 13. The match is to be played the weekend of November the 26th.
Now, the South East boasts some world-famous landmarks, but some are more secret than others, and deliberately so.
Well, apart from its castles and cathedrals, Kent and Sussex have other impressive constructions, some deep underground. Tony Green takes a look at what lies beneath.
Dover, the year 1804. Britain is bracing itself for an invasion. And if Napoleon's forces came, soldiers in the barracks on the Western Heights needed to get to the port 180 feet below swiftly. A problem posed by geography and solved by engineering. This triple staircase is the only one of its kind in the world, and while most of the barracks above ground has gone, this remains more than 200 years later, a legacy to its designer, General William Twiss. It's a key part of Dover's past for historian John Iverson.
John, what is this place and why is it here?
This is the grand shaft staircase, and it's here to get the maximum number of troops from the barracks on the heights down to the seafront in the shortest possible time.
And this is a time when the fear of a Napoleonic invasion was very high.
You could see the tents on the cliffs opposite if you used a telescope. So yes, there was a very, very real fear.
So his solution was a triple staircase?
Yes, if you have a limited amount of space, that's the best way of moving the most men in the shortest possible time. So from the parade ground at the top to move your battalion, your regiment of soldiers to the market square took 11 minutes.
Fast forward 130 years and the threat came from Nazi Germany. And this time a tunnel beneath Dover Castle brought safety to the casualties of Hellfire Corner, hit by bombs and artillery from across the channel.
This is an underground hospital, or to give it its proper name, a medical dressing station, which was established here between August 1941 and the January of 1942.
A grid from 3 long tunnels made 16 wards to treat more than 100 casualties. At the end of the central tunnel, an operating theatre.
It looks pretty basic in here. What kind of surgeries took place?
Well, it might look rather basic, but You know, they were capable of carrying out surgery specifically to treat people with life-threatening injuries. So things that happened during bombing and shelling, burns, it was to preserve people's lives.
So if in wartime they'll have seen injuries that you would never see in peacetime, and this is a place where they could be stabilised.
Absolutely, yeah.
One of the more recent underground structures in Kent doesn't have a military or a practical purpose, and it's here, in the middle of the maze, at Leeds Castle.
Once visitors have made it to the centre, the way out is through a grotto.
Now this looks like something that's from a 17th century landscape garden, but it's actually a lot newer than that, isn't it?
Absolutely. So this was actually created around 1985 by the architect Vernon Gibbard. Grottos generally came from Greek and Roman mythology, and they were generally to do with religion at the time. But post-Renaissance, they became a thing of fun. I had no idea it was here, to be honest with you. And I think it's one of the few that's also associated with a maze, which makes it quite unique, actually.
So it's a bit of a reward for people who've made it to the centre.
Absolutely, which takes some doing. I can't do it on my own. I have to be escorted. I get lost.
From structures that are hard to find to ones that are easy to use, there's a world to explore beneath our feet. Tony Green, ITV News.
Just beautiful, isn't it? Fascinating. Who would know that that lied underneath?
Yeah, and just brilliant pictures as well. Really nice. Right, let's get a check on the weather forecast with the details for us this evening, of course. Here's Pip.
Feels like home, whatever the weather. Valent Boilers and Heat Pumps sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Hello there. Well, it certainly has been a fairly unsettled start to the new week with showers or longer spells of rain, and it stays that way through the next couple of days, only becoming a little bit drier and calmer from Thursday onwards. And it's all down to low pressure at the moment, very much in charge of our weather, giving those showers or longer spells of rain, some blustery winds as well. But through Thursday and Friday, here comes high pressure from the near continent, and that should settle things down at least for a short while. But out there at the moment, a few showers on the scene, winds gradually picking up through the course of this evening. And later in the night, we'll see a band of fairly hefty rain whipping its way eastwards. There could be some heavy and thundery downpours on that, and some pretty blustery and gusty winds too. But it should clear most parts by dawn, and then we'll be left with drier, albeit perhaps still rather cloudy conditions for a time. Tomorrow morning, likely to see the best of the driest and brightest weather, but as the day wears on, we'll see showers becoming quite widespread, some of them heavy, the risk again of the odd rumble of thunder, and in and around the heavier showers, the winds becoming quite gusty again too. But if you can avoid the breeze and the showers, it won't feel too bad, and the best of the sunshine, highs tomorrow around 15 degrees Celsius. These are your times of high water tomorrow. Then for Brighton, they're 10:53 in the morning, 12 minutes past 11 in the evening. Beyond that then, the showers continue overnight into Tuesday and into Wednesday. And as I said, some of those showers continue to be on the heavy side, and perhaps still a few rumbles of thunder. Tightly packed isobars as well, indicating further brisk winds. But as we saw, high pressure building in from Thursday onwards, hopefully a little quieter, at least for a time.
Valent sponsors ITV Meridian Weather.
Well, at least things improve on Thursday. Couldn't get a lot worse, could they?
That's true.
And in just a moment, it's the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
I'm back with a late update just after 11 o'clock this evening, but until then, from the team, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.
Good night.